Welcome back to the Stay Broke podcast. Today we're joined by two guys who have built one of the most innovative performance and rehab ecosystems in North Carolina: BYoung Physical Therapy, the Running PTs, and Octane Baseball. First up, Brandon Young, former MLB pitcher prospect turned biomechanics specialist. He's the creator of the 8 cylinders of pitching system, has worked with the Atlanta Braves and MLB All-Stars, and is known for using tech like 3D motion capture and force plates to keep pitchers healthy and explosive. And next we've got Dr. Lee Welch, a board-certified orthopedic specialist, researcher, and running biomechanics expert. His work has been published in peer-reviewed journals and featured by brands like Nike and Runner's World, and he leads performance and speed development across their clinics. Together, they've built a powerful blend of science, tech, and real-world coaching, and today we're going to break down how they think, how they train, and how they're changing the game for athletes across the region. Gentlemen, welcome to the Stay Broke podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for your time. I know you're both busy. I like to sometimes go into like how we've connected, and the way we connected was my daughter's pretty extreme athlete and constantly battling injuries and other things. And we found out that you guys moved in right next door and you specialized in both upper and lower extremities. And I was like, man, this sounds like it might be a good fit. So we tried it out. You know, things were going great. And then she had a pretty severe injury. And then as she was transitioning from juvenile to adulthood and getting ready for a European championship, she had 3 months from surgery to competition. And you guys worked with her so well to get her ready for it. And that's been the journey so far. So we appreciate you guys. And that's kind of how we got connected. If you want to, go ahead and tell me who you are and kind of how you've got here and what brought us here today. Just a little bit of your background.
Brandon Young. So the driver behind the business, the backstory is, I tore my UCL, which is ulnar collateral ligament, when I was in high school. And prior to that, yes, I had caught the attention of the Atlanta Braves. This was years ago. Like, you could go to their ballpark and try out. And I went to a tryout, and they were open, so anyone could go. And I lit up the radar gun, and the next year they sent me a prospect letter. I was unable to attend that particular camp because I did this, and I was like, man, I hope they don't find out. So anyway, long story short is they did, as well as the colleges and such that were interested in me at that time. And that was quite the identity crisis, right? To go from, my identity was Brandon the baseball player. That's what I always was going to, in my mind, I was going to be a big leaguer, and, I was going to have years and years, and, you're young, you don't understand how hard it is to make it to that level. And I'm certainly not saying I would have ever made it, even if I stayed healthy, first and foremost. That's really, I respect those that have made it all the way there, and especially those that can stay. But it was an identity crisis for me, because I'm like, I'm not Brandon the baseball player anymore. I've got this scar, and I'm going through rehab, and who am I? And, there's a lot of things start to change. And when I was going through physical therapy, I'm like, this is a really cool profession. Like, the orthopedic surgeon was phenomenal. And he was just so personable. That kind of got my attention. It was Douglas Martini at Cary Ortho, and then I had rehab, and the PT was nice, but it was lacking, right? They really focused on my elbow. They didn't really look at other things. When it came time to start throwing, they just handed me a piece of paper and said, here's a throwing program, good luck. And in my mind, it's like, what if my mechanics created this? And I've had surgery. I've had all this rehab. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars. We're talking months off, missed opportunities. And if my mechanics did this, then it's going to happen again, because we haven't addressed the driver. And, this is not good, right? we need to be better than this. So some of the best businesses solve problems, right? Well, that's what most businesses should do, is they provide solutions to problems. And so the vision for a one-stop shop for baseball pitchers was born. And from there, it was the journey was long, and I can go into as much detail as you guys want, and you can edit it as you need.
Yeah, and we'll get to more specifics about the business as we go along too. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, that I can go into specifics, but why don't I just answer who I am? So that's the beginning, right? That's what created who I am, and since that day when I tore this UCL and realized that the medical profession is not where it should be to give the best care. We fast forward to I am still on that journey today, finding out new techniques, new treatments, and getting as good as we can possibly get at treating all injuries, shoulder, elbow alike. It doesn't matter if you throw a ball. We are the best at treating shoulders and elbows, non-athletic population. Of course, with baseball pitchers, we're exceptional, but, I'm BYoung Physical Therapist, and founder, co-owner of BYoung Physical Therapy and the Running PTs, and Octane Baseball with an 8. So that's who I am.
Awesome. Lee.
My name's Lee Welch. I like to refer to myself as the often injured runner. When I was in my 20s, I was working in a different career. I was a scientist for a pharmaceutical company, and I like to run. I grew up running, and I was always getting hurt and wondered why. Kind of like Brandon, I wanted to know why, like where were these things coming from? And I ended up going to PT and thought it would be an interesting career, and it would allow me to specialize in working with runners in the lower extremity and figure out where some of my personal injuries were coming from, but also help other people. And so I, in applying to physical therapy school, I met Brandon. He was a physical therapist at Cary Ortho at the time, and he kind of took me under his wing and mentored me before I went to PT school. I was volunteering there to get hours to apply, and ended up getting into East Carolina and went back to school with really an interest of working with runners long term. And fast forward to a few years later, after I graduated, I found out Brandon had opened his own business, and we got to kind of connecting again, and he hired me. I was the first PT he hired, and the goal was for me to kind of complement the upper extremity specialization that he was providing. He could see everything. He's a great, phenomenal PT, and to kind of capitalize on being able to bring the lower extremity half into the business and target the runners in this area, and create a product that we could help that population as well. So we ended up partnering together after he hired me, and then we opened the Running PTs together as well. So it's very much the same business, but different specializations, and we provide the same great care across the board. And our goal at BYoung and the Running PTs, I always tell the PTs when they're coming on, like, if your job is to figure out what hurts and why. That's always been our focus. Like, we're really good at figuring out what hurts if we can identify the injury. There are times where we're not able to, because that's what MRIs exist for, but we can get pretty close. But more importantly, as PTs, we need to figure out why the injury is occurring and address that. And a lot of times that's mechanics, throwing mechanics, running mechanics. There's other variables as well that we're really good at finding and kind of deciphering. So that's my background and journey to kind of where we are now.
So it sounds like you guys both had like a shift or something that shaped your experiences. Can you take us back and like talk a little bit about like the mindset shift of going from one thing to like swinging a complete 180 and going in the other direction?
Elaborate a little bit more, like.
So, like for you, for example, your baseball injury, and then going from that to like now I'm gonna run my own PT. Like aside from just getting excited about like, oh, I like this, there's an opening for it. Like talk a little bit about the mental strain or the mind shift that goes with along with that.
Yeah, so it was definitely for me. It was the identity crisis of who am I now, and I think a lot of young athletes go through that when they pour so much into a sport. And then the sport maybe leaves them behind because they weren't good enough, or they got injured, they got taken out, or whatever the case may be. They're not that person anymore, right? And so for me, the physical therapy route was just, it seemed fun. Those guys seemed to enjoy themselves. I'm a people person. I can talk all day and I don't get exhausted. So I don't go home and say, I can't talk to another person. I'm still ready to socialize. Yeah. So I knew it would be good for me. So also there was an interest in doing it better. And so everything I did from that moment on was revolved around being the best at that. So in undergrad, I did exercise physiology because I knew that would be the backbone of how exercise affects the human body, and that's exactly what it is. And at East Carolina, that ex-phys degree is tough. You border on a minor in chemistry and a minor in biology to get it. So I mean, it was the inorganics, it was organic chemistry, both of those, a lot of physics, and then it was heavy physiology and how exercise affects the body. And so it took that. Of course, I'm making it about pitching and how do you train these guys at the best level. And then I go to PT school to get my master's in physical therapy. And then in every course, pediatrics, neuroscience, neuroanatomy, I made it about pitching as well. So, and then when I graduated, I got a job at Cary Ortho, and when I came out of PT school, I was full of piss and vinegar. I mean, I was just ready to go win it all, right? And those coworkers, of course things settle, but I'm sure they didn't quite appreciate that, all that energy coming in. And, I was all over the docs and asking them questions and reading MRIs and op reports. And so for the 7 years I was there, I was, it was developing that specialty. And that 7 years was tough because it's a high volume clinic. But I took advantage of the setting because those physicians were phenomenal. They're full of knowledge, and I learned as much as I could during that time. And then 3 years later, after that 7 years, then I worked for a physician in North Raleigh. It was a smaller place. One physician, Rob Jones, phenomenal surgeon, shoulder and lower extremity. He was just well-rounded, and I ran his office for 3 years, and we spent a lot of time. He served as a great mentor as well. So that formed the foundation to then step out. Now, all along that 10 years with those orthopedic outfits, when I would get off, I would go and do pitching lessons with pitchers locally. And so that filled a lot of evenings and a lot of Saturdays and Sundays for 10 years. And I would go to the games and I'd watch these guys perform and clock them and see, the work that we did, what was the outcome. And so all along just analyzing everything. And it created the reputation, the trust in the community to then launch. And so, and the first 18 months of launching BYoung Physical Therapy, those were 100+ hour weeks every week, no vacation, no days off. And so for 18 months straight, I did that. And finally, I got to a point, I hired Lee, and it got to a point where I could actually take some time, but it continued to be a hamster on a wheel for a long time. I have a little bit of breathing room now, but there's still so busy, right? There's so much. to running a business and continue to create a brand that can compete.
Yeah.
So
you were the first employee?
I was the first PT.
PT.
Brandon had an office administrator,
mm-hmm.
And so I was the second employee.
Okay.
But yeah, there was the three of us in 2015 for about a year, and then from there. We just continued to grow. So
a couple of things. One is, it sounds like you had an idea during the process that you wanted to be in business for yourself. Was that clear, or was that something that developed as you went?
That's a great question. So I spent a lot of time trying to convince Cary Ortho that they needed to have a lab. And they're like, we're not going to spend $500,000 on this this motion capture equipment for pitchers, And I mean, I can't blame them. It's their business model, right? It's their business. And so with enough trying to force them to do what I thought, I realized that it was Cary Orthopedic and not Brandon Orthopedic, right? And so I need to move on, and I managed for Rob, and similar, we talked about some collaboration, and just no one really wanted to go and take that big step to get the motion capture stuff and really take this thing all in serious.
Yeah.
And so the vision became clear that I needed to do it. It needed to be me. And so it took me about a year to, or close to it, to get the 3D system. I went in debt for it, but that was one of the best investments I ever made. And, I know there's only really 2 private practices that have that kind of equipment in the United States. And there's a reason, right? And one of them is physician owned down in Texas. So that's a big step, and it doesn't really fit inside the PT business model. You can't build units when you're markering someone up, and when you're doing a mocap, and when you're tracking the markers, you can't bill for that time, right? You can do it cash wise, but you have to catch up to the consumer's got to catch up to what this new product is and how good is it. So that in itself was a model that took years and years to form. And again, the trust from the community. And when Bobby does the 3Ds now at Octane, I'll still step in and do some 3D analysis. But to do a 3D analysis is $1,250. That's how much it costs to do 3D, and it's worth every penny. It takes a lot of time. The equipment is outrageous. There's a lot of overhead. It's worth every penny, but the consumer has to then, has to understand that price without getting sticker shock, and that comes from, getting results and getting the trust of the community.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of barriers that had to be overcome with a lot of sweat equity, a lot of time.
So I feel like a lot of people with that, like the entrepreneurial mindset, do that. They go to work for somebody else and they feel like they get stuck in a box. Meanwhile, they're seeing all this other stuff.
Yep.
But you're being contained in that box. Like anytime you try and step out, it's like, no, get back in there, and that's where a lot of people mess up, is they get in a hurry and it's like, all right, I've done this for a year. I know everything. I'm going to go do my own business. But you really took your time learning, moving on to train under somebody else, and then finally going into it.
A lot of people will say, you will regret that time you spent, right? Because it was away from my wife and away from my kids, and at the end, no one says, I wish I'd have spent more time working. And I think there's some truth to that. But my wife is one of the main reasons why it worked, because she had my back the whole time. She's like, look, go do this thing. I've seen you've got this passion that drives you. You're doing it for the right reasons. It's not just for monetary gain. And I think that's why the business has been as successful as it has been. It just wasn't for money. I had a passion and a drive. That was the driver. I'm going to solve this problem. I'm going to change some lives out there. The money will slowly come with that, but that wasn't the objective. I think if I had have spent all that time away from my family just for monetary gain, there is some regrets, but I'm still on a journey and achieving these goals. And I'm still having a great time, and that's the honest truth.
Yeah. And we've been talking about it in some of our videos recently that like, I feel like some people are problem solvers. They're put here to solve a problem, and sometimes you don't know what that problem is. And the only way to find it sometimes is putting yourself into an industry that you're passionate about and staying there for a while until you find the problem, and then you build off the solution. And that's where a lot of people go wrong again, is just they want to create a solution when they don't even know what the problem is. And now you don't know who your clients are, but it takes time to do it that way. So there's time away, but as long as you're bettering yourself and not just for a paycheck, like you said, then there's definitely gain. That's stuff that you can't get later in life.
That's right. So we're still evolving. I think the chase and the driver to solve baseball pitchers' issues, I'll just use one statement. I'll build off of that. Like elbow issues, elbow pain in a pitcher is 90+% of the time, that's the symptom. It's not the problem. So you have to problem solve to get there. It's generally the shoulder, but it can also be overuse of mechanics. So you have to know how to check all those boxes, right? But the drive for this pitching specialty has created, this absolute shoulder specialty within our company that is unlike any other PT practice. And so if there's any push that I would like to push out in the community, it's like, if you have a shoulder issue, I don't care if you're 95 and you don't throw baseball or you hate baseball, we can fix you, and we want to fix you, and we can fix you quickly. Like, there's so many people that have surgery, and we could have stopped it. Yeah. Because maybe the rehab just didn't know how to get rid of this pain. And the pain didn't require, 3 portal sites and all that comes with that. So
and it's not pushed enough. It's everything's drugs and surgery, and it's like I had the same thing. I have the 3 portal sites. I had surgery on my shoulder for something that could have probably been easily healed, and after the surgery it never got any better, and I've been dealing with it for so many years until I spent, I think, only 2 months next door, and I've been able to sleep on my shoulder again. I couldn't do that for 12, 15 years.
It's the formula.
The simple, it wasn't anything special. I mean, it wasn't anything it was just like, do this repeatedly and it's going to get better. Like, okay, what do I have to lose, right?
Yeah, there's some, I was just doing continuing education with the PTs, and we were talking about neuroscience. Those simple stretches come from an absolute understanding of arthrokinematics of the joint, right? So if you don't have that understanding, then those stretches don't come to be, and people still have problems. But I think, one thing that I do want to get across the community, I'm known as Brandon the sports guy, Brandon the pitching guy, but I really should be known as Brandon the shoulder guy, or our company. Like, that is, there's so many people that are hurting, and we can fix that. And we can fix it easily.
Yeah. And there are some things that have to be fixed with surgery, but then you guys, I know from experience, you guys work really well with the surgeons to help make sure that the right rehab's happening afterwards.
Absolutely.
And proper rehab's just as important as a good surgeon, I feel like. So I don't want to leave you out of the conversation. And this might be generalizing a bit, but we had another guest on here talking about it. So you went on to get your doctorate, right? Mm-hmm. And statistics say that people in higher education, masters and above, aren't good entrepreneurs because they understand the risk on a higher level, mm-hmm. right? So my question is, do you think you would have went into business for yourself had you not went through the steps to work under Brandon and then develop a secondary business together? Like, what was your mindset coming into the entrepreneurial world or the business world?
Yeah. The desire was there. I think eventually I would have, because of what you said earlier, like finding myself in a box and feeling like I needed to step out. But so I always, it wasn't that I was hell bent on being my own business. I didn't have that entrepreneurial drive, but a natural problem solver. And I definitely was interested in it, but I don't think that I would be anywhere close to where I am if I had not partnered with him. Like, I am, Brandon and I are very different in good ways. We're very, I like to say we're like fire and ice, you know.
True.
He's a lot more big picture, visionary, incredibly motivated, disciplined and focused, and, you know, makes really, really good, healthy decisions for the business. I am the kind of detailed person that can kind of, sometimes I don't make decisions because I focus too much on the small things, but that allows us to work really well together. So I'm the type of person that I've told Brandon this before, like when I grew up playing, I think the game was called Warcraft. I playing video games growing up. I was the type of player that, so in Warcraft, you have an army that starts from nothing, and your opponent has an army that starts from nothing, and the goal is to beat your opponent. And, you know, there's some different ways you can do that. You can go out and attack your opponent, right, really quickly. You can build your fortress up, you know, and then go out and attack. And I would play that game in a way that I think a lot of people wouldn't. I would slowly and methodically build and reinforce to the point where there was no chance that I was going to lose. Like I would do that like logically, like using like steps. And, you know, when I would play other people that were a lot faster than me, and they would beat me sometimes, right? But if they gave me time and I got to a certain point, then there was no chance. Like I would just,
Right.
It's like I got satisfaction in going out and just knowing for sure, without a shadow of doubt, like we were going to win. So I think that kind of, it bleeds into our relationship to a degree. Like I like to look out for the backswing and make sure that things are taken care of from a detailed standpoint. And I don't think that, there's been a lot of other things too, but I don't think that I would have been able to scale a business the way that we have without him. Mm-hmm. So it would have remained inside of, you know, the confines of, you know, you would
have built your own box.
Yeah. I just, you know, I think I just don't make decisions on a big scale as well as he does.
A lot of times it comes down to risk. Like, do you guys handle risk differently?
I don't think we do. I think we look at it from different angles and kind of, you know, I think we make better decisions together because we're able to look at things from different angles as long as we work together. So, but in terms of financial risk, I don't think that we do. I think we're pretty aligned there.
Debt averse for sure. Like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah. It was, but I launched the business. I really didn't have anything in the bank. And there was, you know, I just told Jennifer, look, there's, you know, all cable, all that was gone. And there was no eating out. Like we really had a strict budget. But yeah, I look back and those were some of the best times. Like we worked together and we managed this with 2 small kids and yeah. I have fond memories.
And we've talked about this, and I've recognized that I didn't have to take that risk that he took. That risk, you know, that's that step of
and that's
the unknown, right? Yeah, I never had to do that.
Yeah.
I had to work, but I didn't have to take that risk, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't know what that is like. I can kind of imagine. But I do think I would have eventually done it. But again, it wouldn't have been the same. I've learned a lot from him clinically as well that really polished my skills, and having the access to the 3D system and doing all those 3D analyses on the runners helped me learn how to do a lot better 3D analysis and get people better. A lot of what we do in the clinic, we've learned from the 3D analysis. A lot of my therapists don't even know that. Like the things that I've taught them, a lot of it I learned from the 3D. So it's kind of accelerated their outcomes through kind of what we've learned. And so, yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the decision to create multiple entities opposed to one umbrella? Or I guess, is BYoung the umbrella and the other ones fall under that, or how's the business structured?
Well, that's a loaded question. The legal entity is North Carolina Institute of Sports Biomechanics. So back in 2010, I created that because I'm like, we're going to have a bunch of specialists that are like me in their respective sports under one umbrella. The baseball guy, right? The pitching guy that understands the running guy that understands the mechanics of runners at a 3D level, the highest level. Maybe the volleyball, maybe it's the swimming person. So we're going to collectively have these sports specialists, these physical therapists that are the very best. And they're passionate and they're driving towards being the best. And it collectively, we're gonna house all these specialists. That was the original vision, right? That name just, we're launching a PT practice. I'm pretty ballsy. I don't think that name was going to be the right start. Had to have physical therapy in it, for people, for the community to really understand and embrace. And so it was the 11th hour where I got BYoung from. It was actually was the current landlord in Apex. He's like, just call it BYoung. I thought about it. I said, well, it's got a play on name. That could work. And so to answer your question, that's where that came from. And then that's kind of a DBA off of North Carolina Institute of Sports Biomechanics. Running PTs is its own DBA. We have some therapists that are interested, and so we got a guy that loves golf, and you got BYoung Golf. If someone comes in and they're fiery and they're interested, and we'll support them, and there's really no ceiling on any of our employees. They know that. We tell them that. So you structure it that way to mitigate risk? Is that and so you can arrange partnerships and different agreements without having to involve other entities? No, it's probably more just to let the community, it was more of a marketing.
Just to say, hey, we do this and we do this.
Correct.
Okay.
Would you answer it that way?
Yeah, from the running, my perspective is from the running standpoint when I came on, and after about a year, I had a decent caseload of runners, and we were running out of space in our Apex location. We needed to open another clinic. And at that time, I felt very confident that the trajectory of the amount of runners we would see would be a lot higher if it wasn't called BYoung Physical Therapy. Even if it was the same business. I wanted to go and put that flag out that, like, as Brandon has said, let's just put our flag out. This is what we do. Yeah. We treat runners, we treat them at the highest level. And so we opened another office, and we just put running PTs on the side of it. And it's worked. I mean, it's, I think a lot of runners, when they hear that there's a physical therapist that specializes in running, they're not going to want to go anywhere else. And we truly are, I take that seriously. Like, it's not just the same PT. It's very different than where a non-running specialist. So I just felt like it was going to allow us to really grow in the community from a running standpoint. And it made sense to keep it all underneath the same business. It didn't matter to me for, I cared about getting in front of runners, right?
Sure.
So, and since then we've outgrown, the way we've grown is really, we just kind of outgrow spaces, and we need to kind of open more, right? We've started to open offices with both signs on the door, because we have a reputation in both kind of communities. And so we've been able to start to, as we grow, you will see the offices with kind of both specialties on the doors. And there's just so many runners. I mean, the the BYoung brand spread far and wide, right? I mean, that people come from all over the state to come here. Baseball is a tight-knit community, and with runners, there's just so many of them. And the community has been, especially locally, we're well known, and so I think it's really worked. To kind of put your flag out and say, this is what we do it well, and now we're having to tell people, like, no, we can see you for plantar fasciitis, like if you don't run, like, of course we're good at that, so we kind of fight that to a degree. Like, we have people that feel like they're not athletic enough to come see us for their shoulder or their foot or something like that. And that's just simply not true. Like,
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, the brand is there to kind of market a specific niche, but our therapists can, they can see anything, and we're really, really quite good on the running side with the lower extremity in non-runners. Right. So I would argue we're better than most because of what we know. And same thing with if you got shoulder pain, there's not going to be a physical therapy office that's any better. And what's happened in North Carolina over the last, and all over the country, still a lot of the older population in particular isn't aware of is you don't need a referral to come to PT. And the movement of physical therapists towards the doctorate, they didn't have the doctorate when Brandon went to PT school, or else he would have his. But the movement towards the doctorate is really so that PTs can be the direct access provider, or the entry-level provider for musculoskeletal injuries. PTs are musculoskeletal experts, and if somebody has pain, a PT is a really good, in my opinion, is the best option to start with, because we can evaluate you, we can assess you, we can give you stuff to help you feeling better immediately. And we know when to refer out. Like, we will refer out if we need to, if it's outside of our scope, or if imaging is warranted, or if it's surgical. That's the direction of PT in general has been headed that way. And I think people in the community are starting to figure it out, that you don't need a referral to come see us. And that's really the majority of our business is direct access. 60, 70, 80% probably of our patients just come straight to us. Excuse me.
Is that mostly walk-in or word of mouth?
Yeah, word of mouth being the strongest. Yeah. That's the strongest referral source.
It's the best way to build a business too.
You take care of people, right? So, what we see happen is, you get somebody better and they'll send you their family members and their friends. And so a lot of if you look at our patients, you can kind of track a lot of them back to kind of somebody that was taken care of years ago, right? That, so that's really been our business model, is to take care of people, get them better, try to provide them a really, really good experience, and just be honest with them. And, that's how we've done it, with the results being like this point of the spear.
You touched on something I'll briefly say, like the knowledge that came from the 3D system. Like, you're 100% correct. I mean, there's so many things that we've developed clinically that came from that. And it's rare. People don't have those. I'll throw gold nuggets out on Instagram, and I'll have PTs get on and blast me or argue with me and say, you don't need to look at this, you should be looking at this. And it's not in a, not in like a superiority type complex, it's like, you have no idea, because you don't have this 3D system in your office where you're treating this guy, and then you transition them over here, and then you see under the microscope their throwing motion. I mean, this 3D system is accurate to a sub-millimeter, and that you get the kinematic and the kinetic data. You get to see all this, and then you pair it with injury, and you learn so much over the years, right? And so I don't argue with them, and it's not really my job to teach them and catch them up to speed, but they don't know what they don't know. Let's put it that way. That's the best way to put it. And I don't want to sound conceited. Like, I still feel like I've got a lot of work to do, but I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep moving forward.
Well, it's any industry, right? You can be really great in an industry, but if there's somebody that's utilizing the newest technology, they're gonna be better. Like there's just no way around
Right,
it, right?
right.
And is it necessary? And that's where people get into the arguments. Well, I can do it just as fine without it, but
And that's for the
until you
consumer.
do it, do you know?
Right. They're doing that to get the consumer.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of getting in your feed and saying something negative is they want to direct traffic to them and they want to maybe chop you down a little bit, and it's laughable.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of consumers actually see through that.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. We're so fortunate to be able to book such amazing guests, but booking a guest every week is proving to be a real challenge. And one of the biggest things keeping us from continuing to book amazing guests is they're waiting to see our channel get a little bit bigger and for the interviews to get shared a lot more. So please help us out just by giving this a quick share. If you're enjoying the content, give it a like. This will help it get this story out to a lot more people and help us to continue to book amazing guests so we can keep bringing this info and entertainment to you and doing the most we can with this opportunity we have. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the interview. To understand like the system that you're using, is this like a sports level? Like the only other places that are using it would be like
Research level.
It's research level.
This
Are
is
the
university
sports teams
level. This
using
is
it?
baseball has started to, MLB has started to put these labs in. And so a lot of the teams have now put them in. They weren't there. I was definitely the first to put it in a private PT practice that was also performance back then. Of course, we split off and now Octane is using that for performance. But, I was using it for healthcare and performance.
So the first on the East Coast, the first in the United States.
United States, like from a PT, private PT practice standpoint. And we've been learning off that thing for over 10 years now.
So you're taking the best technology that is designed for research and for athletes, the most elite athletes, and you're opening it up to the public at an affordable rate where you don't even have to have insurance or be referred to come and use it.
Yeah.
That's
Awesome.
The 3D system is anywhere from 8 to 12 cameras. They're infrared cameras, and there's markers that you place all over your body in relevant landmarks, and then you move underneath the cameras in whatever sport is relevant. And then the value from that, you'll see like online we post pictures, videos of the skeletons that come out of that, right? You can look
3D
at it in different
renderings.
directions, but that's not really the meat and potatoes of the report. The meat and potatoes of it is for each movement, there is a report that we get that has essentially whatever is designed, but for most of it, it's different joints, how they move in different planes. And then for running, it's like compared left to right and compared to normative data or uninjured runners. And so you can compare the way somebody's moving to their other side or to a certain population. But for the baseball side, the report that we get, Brandon developed with the company that makes the 3D. So it's very that report is what is valuable, and the report was developed by Brandon. So the report that is used in MLB teams and anywhere where they're using this system for baseball, he wrote the report. And so the information that they're getting came out of his brain. He told them kind of what to write. And we work with Qualisys a little bit on the running report. They don't really. There's some of my input has been in there, but not to the degree of the baseball. So, but that report, people like the videos online of the skeletons, sure. But to us, that's not the first thing we look at. We look at the reports to see what's the hip do in the first 10% of stance phase. That could be driving their Achilles issue. We need to be able to see. The 3D can pick up things that you can't see with your eyes. It can pick up timing. It can look at the degree to which you move, how rapidly or slowly you move in certain planes and positions that you just can't see it. And so if you know where to look, you can really glean a lot of information. But we had to learn that over the years. Like, where are the pearls usually located in the report, right? And you truly can't see those things with your eyes. Like the skeletons don't, that's really not the value of them, but you could speak to that report a little bit in that process. But he developed the 8 cylinders of pitching years ago, and the report was kind of built off of that, probably with more. As he's learned more, there's probably more in there than the 8 cylinders.
There's a ton in there.
Good segue into it. Can you explain what the 8 cylinders of pitching is? And then also I'm curious, like, how long did it take you to develop not only that, but then develop this report?
Yeah. So that, 8 cylinders, I look at pitching in the human body like a vehicle's engine. So in an engine, you have cylinders. And those cylinders have a certain amount of volume in them, right? So that's where you get 5.0 liter, 6.2 liter. And so the more the liters, the more horsepower you can have. And so I looked at that portion as your neuromuscular ability, and then of course the energy that comes from one cylinder is then passed on to the next cylinder, and it's this cumulative effect, and the output is this kinetic energy that then turns the rocker arm and makes your wheels turn, right? So that's how an engine works. You're getting kinetic energy from one cylinder and you have 8 that work together to build this energy up and then supply it to the axle. Okay? For a human, for a pitcher, you have the same thing. You have back leg driving down the mound, and you have all this energy coming up from the ground, and then as each segment rotates, that energy is passed from one proximal segment to the next, and then finally that energy is passed to the ball, and whatever the kinetic energy output from your fingertips to the ball is how fast that ball is going to move. So to make it understandable and trainable, I broke it down in 8 pieces, 8 parts that all work together for one outcome. And so that's where the 8 cylinders of pitching came from. I started as a 2D model that I would video people from the side, behind them, and above, looking down. And then I had the score sheet that, cylinder 1's what the back leg did, stride, cylinder 2, hip shoulder separation in the transverse plane, cylinder 3, hip shoulder separation in the sagittal plane, cylinder 4, front leg bracing, cylinder 5 is what the trail leg does, cylinder 6 was scap load, cylinder 7 was external rotation of the shoulder, and cylinder 8 is posture at ball release. And all those things are very important to the outcome of the health of how you throw a baseball as well as how hard you throw it. And so it took years to develop that and then take it from the 2D to a 3D. It took me a long time. Like, I was sending Qualis all this information. Here's what I want. And when they built the report, I've continued to build on it. As a matter of fact, we sent them a new order a couple weeks ago. Like, hey, we want to see this, and put it in cylinder 7 because it makes sense there. So it's grown. It's a gigantic report that you can get all that you want. And so to the consumer that says, why should I get a 3D? A 3D is like an MRI of human motion. So if you just go to a doctor and he just looks at you and says, what's going on? You tell him, my elbow kind of hurts. He doesn't do anything else. That's just a routine visit, right? But then if you go and take this 3D, that's going to tell everything about what's going on in the elbow. So if a doctor really wants to know what's wrong with your elbow, they order the MRI. Well, the 3D system is the MRI of human motion, right? It is, it's you under a microscope. So, and it's still an ongoing process.
So is it more preventative, like for pitchers, I guess, to be preventative and help fix any potential issues in the future? Or is it more for like chronic pain, let's get to the root of it, or is it both?
All encompassing.
And performance.
And performance. Preventative. Like, how do we keep you out of trouble here with an injury? How do we maximize your ability? Like, how much kinetic energy can you get to the baseball is determined by how you use the ground and how you stack your body and how that energy moves from one segment to the next. And everyone's got some area that they can improve. So
what motivated you to spend that much time and effort into creating this thing? And like, I'm sure there were naysayers along the way saying,
Oh, yeah.
You're wasting your time, there's no point in it, or whatever.
The outcome of having no individual that walked through those doors that I could not help, right? And this is a great question. So why did I go from 2D to... So I'll give you the progression. To answer that question is really good. The first step was to get this 2D high-speed camera, right? And I used that. And then there were questions that I couldn't answer about what someone did mechanically. I'm like, if I had this information, I could answer it. And so that segued into getting that 3D motion capture system. And so I built this report and could answer all those questions, but then there became ones that I couldn't answer because they were force related. And so then I put the force plates in, and so the driver is to be the best. That's the driver, right? Is to be able to have any individual walk in with pain that no one else could solve or couldn't gain velocity and be able to answer that question and do it confidently and then help them. That's why I have been driven to do what I've done. So maybe there's a little bit of me in there, a little bit of pride, got to be the best, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's the deep driver, but ultimately it's served the business and the community well.
Well, it's something that we've talked about multiple times, even the short time that we've been going on this podcast, is like, especially you get somebody that has that athletic mindset that got to be the best at something, and then it transitions into something else that almost becomes a replacement obsession or an addiction. And it's like, it's so easy to go the wrong way with those. And that's why we have so many athletes that something happened at some point and they took a hard right and went down the wrong path. And
Right.
then you have the most successful people that it came to that point of making a decision and they found a new healthy obsession that led to, creating whatever's next or something revolutionary. So it's cool to see these patterns. I enjoy it. So you guys were together while you're developing this, right? You guys were partnered at this time? Or did you come in the middle of it?
You came in just shortly after I got the 3D system.
Just had it installed. He wasn't exaggerating when he talked about how busy he was. When getting that thing installed was when I came in after it had been installed. We were just starting to get operational, and he was treating patients 12 hours a day and then getting this 3D system installed. And we had to run it ourselves at the time. But Brandon's the type of personality. This is what really has driven the business, is that, I'm not going to say it exactly right, but an entrepreneur will, I don't know if this is the expression, kind of bite off more than they can chew and then figure out how to chew it, right? I kind of witnessed that, he would make these decisions and I'm like, oh my gosh. And we would figure it out, right? We had to. But he did that before I had come on. But the 3D system was one of those things that it created a lot of work initially because we didn't have anybody that could run it. So it takes a lot of time to get it set up and then run the report, mark everything up and label it and then get your report. And you got to get the patient back and go over it with them. So it's very cumbersome.
Yeah.
But I think you had it for not even a month. Because when I came down that first week or two, Blaze was there with what's his name from Qualis?
Yeah, Sherry Ringer, was she there? Softball.
No, what's his name?
Dan.
Yeah, Dan. I think.
Yeah,
Anyway.
Dan India. Yep.
Anyway, yeah.
So, who was your support system at that time while you went through all of that? Because this is the stuff that I wish that, you know, there was a camera capturing it all, that emotional roller coaster, the ups and downs, the doubt from other people, and then the internalized self-doubt. Like, am I doing the right thing? Am I going into a financial hole that I'm not going to be able to get out of? Like, all these things that entrepreneurs go through on a daily basis that nobody can understand because they haven't been through it themselves. Like, but you have to have somebody to lean on, but not drag down your family. And it's like finding that balance. That's one of the hardest things to find. How'd you make it through that period?
God, I talked to him.
Yeah.
There's, like you said, like you were going to wear out your family. You wear your family out if you bring every problem home, and she was doing all she could with 2 small kids. And, you know, there is a network, Qualis has had a network, but you can't call them every time. You got to figure things out. Like, you got to problem solve. You just got to do. So, I mean, to answer your question, that's probably the best answer. Like, you know, I talk to my parents occasionally. There's only so much they could do. You just have faith, and you keep going. And there were some long nights. You know, I remember it being 25 degrees, and we had a clay mound that we would work with guys on back in the Apex outside, and it was 10:30 at night, and I'm out there, and there's got holes from where they landed. If that's not fixed, the next day it's not going to be good for the pitcher. It's going to be landed in these worn holes. So you got to wet that. So you got to get the water hose. It was frozen, so I had to deal with that. Then you wet it down, and then you get dry dirt in there, and that's how you basically gap fill a mound and tamp it. But it takes a while, and you know, you're just tired, and you got notes to do. You've got problems to solve with staff. Doctors calling, hey, you know, can you get this guy in? It's like, where am I going to put this guy? So, I don't know if there was a lot of time to talk to anybody, to be honest. I just went. Yeah. It's kind of, I'll put it this way, like if you throw someone overboard and they're sharks, they're going to swim. Yep. I mean, that was the option, do or die, sink or, you know, swim or sink. And, I chose to swim.
Yeah. I'm sure there were a lot of moments, like specific moments, but is there any one specific moment that you remember where you're like, if I can't figure this out, then like I'm done, this isn't going to work? Or the adverse where like, I finally figured this out, this proves that I was right, it makes everything worth it?
Honestly, don't think there has been a time where it didn't look like it was going to work. You know, it was a ton of work for very little financial output. You know, it's taken years to get to a point where I would call it a comfortable living. It took years to get there. But again, if your driver's money, you're going to give up. You're going to say, this lemon's not worth the squeeze. So I think that is where I, you know, very different. Is this was a passionate driver. I was going to solve this problem, even if the monetary gain wasn't there, you know. And I think a lot of businesses probably die because the individual was looking for that financial return so quickly, they walk away. They just won't hammer away to find out what's on the other side. Yeah. And so, to be honest with you, no. You know, I'll stick with it and fight until, you know, there's nothing left. But there was a lot of people that told me that to stop with the baseball stuff and it wasn't going to work. And I had a professor asking me, do you think therapists could ever specialize in like a shoulder or something? He said no. And I said, well, not in a vengeful way. I said, I'm going to do it. So
It's weird though, because shoulders are such a common issue.
yeah, they are. But it had not been mastered.
Yeah.
So there's I don't, there was some long, hard days and
I think this might be a bad connection and I might get in some trouble for this. You can tell me. But so there's always the thing like, the worst pain in the world is a woman giving birth, right? And if it's that bad, why would they do it again? But there's this almost amnesia that comes over them to get to what they're after to achieve that new life, that baby, right? Yeah. And it's like, I think entrepreneurs have the same thing, not a pain level per se, but that same amnesia. Like I've gone through hell so many times. Like every time I go on one of these journeys, it's like, it's this up and down and like moments where you just feel like you're in hell and you're alone, and then you come out the other side and then you get done with it and you achieve what you wanted to, and then you're like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Like I made it. And it's like, I've been through that so many times, and it's like part of what we're trying to do right now is like document what that is. But even with being on camera every day talking about building a business, there's no way to portray like what I'm really feeling inside, because one is because I don't want to admit it, and two, it's because I'm not willing to accept it yet, right? And it's like, I'm just going to keep pushing through like everything's still good, and I'm going to keep moving forward. As soon as I start consuming myself with the negativity, like this isn't working, that's not working, what am I thinking, the money's this, whatever, then that's when it all goes to shit. And it's like, if I can just stay positive, focus on what I'm trying to achieve, the passion of it, then when I get through it, it's like, oh, it was worth it.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a good point.
It's like a marathoner, right?
Yeah.
Universally, they almost always say, I'm never doing that again, until the next day. It's an awful process. It hurts, but you don't give up, right? And then you want to do it again, right? Like it's all over with. That's true of a lot of sports and athletes, and I wonder if there's a commonality in that.
Oh, there's definitely a correlation.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think monetary gain probably weeds out a lot of people.
Because
they just won't go through. They're like, this is too hard for too little. But that, in time, that it works, right? And I look back at some of the extra time I spent with people where I didn't run to a computer to do a note just to complete the job, but I spent time with that individual. And I still see them when I go into clinics. They still come. It was in Apex, and there's a guy I hadn't seen in 20 years. And he said, hey, Brandon, I'm glad you're doing so well. Like, you got a great staff here. And it's because, like, he knew I cared, right? That's what you look for in your staff is, they're there for the right reasons.
So how's it from the other side, like watching him go through innovation and go through these things, trying to reach that next goal or start that next, because Octane came later, right? Mm-hmm. Right. Create another business or do whatever he's trying to do.
That was a split. Like we took it from BYoung Physical Therapy and Performance, and we cut that performance off and rebranded it to Octane.
Okay.
So it already had a huge foundation, the knowledge to succeed, a very, very good product, and we're still working on the business side. So, performance is tough to scale.
Yeah.
So
have you kind of learned to trust his process as he goes through this stuff? Like, is he a good salesman? He's like, let me tell you about my next idea. I got this. And you're like, okay, I trust you. Go for it. Or like, how do you deal with his process from the partnership side? Because obviously everything he does affects you in some way or another.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a sign in our Wake Forest office right next door that says, make good decisions, Brandon Young. Like underneath it. I made it for him because he would say that to he would say that to ball players. I wish he still did, but like as he was treating them and they were walking out the door, these 17-year-old boys walking out the door, he'd say, "Hey, Billy, make good decisions," like this is the thing he would say. But he, I think to your question, like he makes good decisions from a big picture standpoint. And he typically, Brandon and I play chess. We play a lot of chess. And it's actually helped our business acumen, I think, because we have the ability to look at things from a lot of different perspectives. And so we've evolved together, but he's always been good at making decisions that he's looked at every aspect and he makes them based on the quality of the business. They have to do, not with him, they're not egotistical personal decisions, they're not financial. I mean, we may have to make decisions that are financially based, but they're decisions that are going to impact the more so our staff, the ability to grow the business from the patient standpoint and that sort of thing. And so I have learned to trust. I mean, we have conversations, like if I disagree, I can tell him I disagree, right? But
Yep.
A lot of the shifts in business that happen are because of decisions that he's made. And a lot of them, I'm being honest, like have to do with trying to do better by our staff and do better by the patient. And they don't have anything to do with us doing better. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's really allowed us to grow the business is by putting the patients and the staff first. He's modeled that for me really well from the very, very, very beginning, is we're going to focus on what we can do to grow the business, and it has nothing to do with.
That's a good quote there.
Me.
Yeah.
So
now I run all my businesses. I didn't always, but once I started living that way, and for those that can't see it, it says you don't build a business, you build people, and people build the business.
So, yeah.
I can't do anything by myself. Like I got all kinds of ideas, and like I choose which ones to implement. But without a team behind me, or without that support, it's not going to happen, or it's not going to go all the way through, or not be what all it could be. And it sounds like that's where the partnership is you got the kind of the 5-year direction, and you're able to implement. Like, hey, you forgot about this and this and this detail. Like, let's.
Yeah, the business wouldn't be where it is without Lee.
Right.
Like the running side, he doesn't get enough credit. Right? The running side, his detail. He's a good confidant. He's great to bounce things off of, and he's a hard worker. He's very efficient. I can get distracted, and it'd take me 10 hours to do what he does in an hour. So it's good to have someone that has that kind of detail, that level of detail. But to reinforce what he said, especially of recent, we're getting ready to grow again. In order to do that, and we've been working really hard this past year to get the business up to where it needs to be to grow. And we've made some fairly big moves to do that. And I think, we're seeing the fruit of those decisions, and our staff is healthier, I feel like. But I'll put this in a chess format, and this is the way I think now. If we were to grow and not have our king protected, which is the name of the game, king would be our current clinics. They're producers, that is our safety net, right? If you leave your king vulnerable to grow, that is not a good move. So in a business, if you're going to grow, but you're not stable in all these very crucial areas, financially, staff-wise, you don't have the right people at each location, you're asking for it. You're asking you're asking for a checkmate, and not your favor. So we've worked long, hard hours to stabilize, and probably that visibility is not seen from the employee perspective, right? They don't see you alluded to this several times, the stress, the hours, the moves that are made, and I don't say that in a bad way. I think they're all terrific. They just don't know.
Well, I think if you're doing it the right way as a leader, they don't know. Like, they might be able to tell when your mood's different. Like, you can't always hide that, but they don't know what you're actually going through at that moment.
And we don't burden them with it.
Mm-hmm.
We tell them we need them, and we tell them how we need them. And the honesty and accountability are crucial to anything, any relationship. It's your marriage, your with your kids, but with your staff, especially the ones that are managing. It's everything. So,
a couple partnership questions, because this is something that I've struggled with. I've had very bad luck with partners, and how did you guys know that like it was a good fit? Like, what moment did you realize like, yeah, this is gonna work? We need to, or like, because you said he came to work for you first, like, so either that or what about him made you realize that like, oh, I can trust him and bring him into what I'm doing, and we can do it together now?
So, well, looking at Lee, I knew he was driven, smart, and a little older. And so when I lectured the classes at East Carolina, and I still do, I go and lecture on pitching biomechanics. And both of our mentor, Blaze Williams, is a professor there. He's at Nike headquarters now, working. But he pointed at Lee, the class photo, and said superstar. And so that stood out. And then, I was working for Rob Jones up here in North Raleigh, and Lee was in Fayetteville. And Lee sent me a baseball player from Fayetteville. I had never had a physical therapist send me a patient, even though they all knew that I was specialized. They just, for obvious reasons, business being one of them, didn't want to send. But he had no problem sending. And he stayed in touch with me, and then he followed Blaze up to Richmond for further mentorship. And all this stuff weighs on my mind. Like, he's trying to get better, right? And he was very forthcoming when I hired him. He said, look, I have aspirations to open my own business. Because it's important to me, like, I'm going to teach you something very novel to this business. And so don't go out and try to plant a clinic, poach the relationships and plant a clinic right in my territory. And so I had that conversation with all incoming physical therapists. If that's your plan, tell me up front.
Yeah.
And just plan on moving out of state, if that's what you want to do, because it's rotten to do that. So he was very honest, like he had aspired to do it, but, felt like we could do it together. And so to answer your question, like he had the right pedigree. He knew the 3D system from East Carolina, just like I did. He was interested in something that would diversify the portfolio, running, right? And I had runners that needed a specialist that I was treating. He was honest with me and upfront. That's crucial, right, to any relationship. And so, there's always struggles, and we've grown together, and he's been able to say the hard things to me and the hard things to him. And, there's people that can't take that constructive criticism. That's not good. And there's people that can.
Yep.
And so that's also important at the highest level. It's like, when I tell you this is important to me, then you better act on that. And he did. So I was like, I think he would be the perfect partner. And he has been. This is what, you've been with me now over 10 years, building this thing, and it wouldn't be what it is without Lee. So it's good. I think I'd probably be tough to work with for at times, right? So I'll let him answer kind of how he sifted through. Yeah, I'll hook my wagon to yours. I don't know. Go ahead.
And I always say that too. I'm sure they've heard it. If you're going to hook your wagon to this train, you better hang on, because it's a ride.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it was an easy decision for me because I was coming, I was an employee, right? And I think it was an easy decision for a lot of ways, but that wasn't the only one. I knew that I was to develop this running specialty. It was an opportunity like no other, right? I knew I was going to be able to plant my seed in fertile soil, right? Like the soil was there, patients were there, the business was there. It was a very popular business already, right? It was going to be easy. It's a very popular area for running. And I recognized that we were very different. And this was going to be, I had a lot of conversations with my wife about it, and we agreed this was going to be a lot easier road to owning our own business. And also going down the road with somebody at your side versus like doing it alone, So for me, I kind of, I can't imagine doing it any other way because of not having a partner that you can kind of rely on. Like to what you were saying earlier, like in the hard times, like who do you have when you're a business partner, right? You have them that you can talk to. He didn't have that initially. I've always had that.
Yeah.
So I don't have to bring a lot of stuff home or to other people because I have him that I can talk to. But the most important thing, was that he's a trustworthy man. I knew I could trust him. He's honest. He's not gonna, And I think the other thing that's really strengthened our relationship is that money is not first. Those are the hardest conversations to have with a business partner. Those are hard conversations to have with anybody. But if money is not the object, and we've both had to work, especially me, at that not being, with my X's and O's brain, like, it's like, well, what are we doing? You know what I mean? What are we doing this for? But if I don't look at that, then it gets a lot easier and we can have those conversations. I imagine if money was the object, things would probably be a lot harder. Because there's going to be seeds of bitterness and selfishness and, decisions are harder to make.
It's the thing that ends most marriages and most partnerships.
Yeah.
It's money.
Yeah. So, and it's truly not the topic of conversation, and it's not the thing that drives the business. And I think that makes us different. I mean, we certainly feel that way, but,
I'm going to have to wrap this up, but I did want to say a few things that you haven't even asked me yet that I think have created a very healthy workspace and insulate the king while we grow. The first 10 years working for companies, the gossip was out of control. And gossip, I look at it very it's simply this. If you're saying something about someone else to someone that can't help you, it's gossip. Plain and simply. And it comes in very, very different. It comes in different forms, but always, each staff member, when I can, I'll have a conversation with about it. I'm like, look, if it comes like, hey, did you see what Brandon was wearing today? It starts like that, right? And it's seeds of cancer is what it is. And I am very adamant, and the staff from the partnership, from Lee being in that leadership role to the clinical directors to the admin, that's just not tolerated. And it's amazing. There's a lot of people that come from other organizations that are very refreshed that is policed. A lot of businesses just say, "Oh, it's human nature. They're gonna talk," right? And so I think that's been huge. And it's you usually end up finding out who wants to just stir up drama and stuff, and they find their way out one way or the other. You do what you say you're going to do. You treat people fairly. You hold them accountable. That's kind of how we've we've done this, and Lee, I've never had any issues with any of that stuff. I told him early on, look, if there's something that I'm doing, or you have a problem with me, and you go home and you're talking to your wife about it, and you're just negative about it, she can't help you with me. And a lot of times, you have to, as a business owner, you have to see that individual, you're not just bringing them into business, but the significant other is also going to be part of that influence. That, I guess when you're asking about partnerships and stuff, that can be one of those things that can create problems if maybe the spouse is seeing all these hours and not seeing what they think should be the return on all that time, and that can create some bitterness and problems. But we didn't have that issue. So
real quick, last thing on partnership, you guys, or the one thing that we tell people anytime we're talking about a partnership video is the most important thing is having a way to make a final decision if there's a disagreement. Do you guys have any sort of ways of dealing with, like, if you're not on the same page with something? Like, is there a way that you decide, like, whether it's flipping a coin or whatever it is, like, this is how we're going to make that final decision?
I can answer that.
Go ahead.
His nickname is El Jefe, so
El Jefe.
I will. I defer if there is a disagreement, I will defer to him as the founder, and it's always been easy. Like, I don't think that we've ever had an issue there, but maybe in some businesses that could be a problem. But
no, I haven't had. There's been no issues.
Yeah.
A lot of times we'll get down to the root of it. Maybe
we talk about
early on. I needed to let someone go for a certain reason, and I think Lee's like, no, we gotta, let's hang on, and I said, well, you're gonna deal with all of it. You're gonna correct behavior. You're gonna deal with the consequences. And I said, no, let's let her
go. Is there anything that, like, I know there's a lot more we could talk about, but we did cover a lot. Is there anything that either of you want to say that we didn't go over?
No, I think you asked really good questions.
I appreciate that.
Obviously that it's obvious that you have a business mind and you kind of know what to ask, so.
I try not to let the sheet steer it. It may be in the beginning, but as soon as the conversation takes off, if you got somebody that knows what they're talking about, it's so easy just to get into it. I enjoy it.
I appreciate you having us, and it's a good walk down memory lane.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll skip to the end then. Go over where we can find you.
Lee, you're a detail man.
You can find us online at BYoungPhysicalTherapy.com and the Running PTs, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, X, and also Octane Baseball with an 8. And then we have 4 offices in the Triangle in Apex, South Raleigh, Cary, and Wake Forest.
Awesome. ChatGPT makes things so much easier to research people now. And I actually read that you guys like to play chess. So I was wondering if that was going to come up in the conversation. I was going to bring it up if you didn't. I thought it was funny. So it was right. I don't know.
Those are intense battles too.
Yeah.
This man is good. So.
All right. So I don't know if you've seen one of our podcasts, but we end them all the same way. And the reason is because once I figured out my definition, it changed the way I run my businesses and my home life. So for each of you individually, how do you personally define success?
To me, the success of the clinics that we have established have good leadership and they run efficiently. The patient doesn't notice a difference in the level of care. The business is continuing to grow. I think as I get down to the root, like the business is continuing to grow. That's the measurement. That's the scale. It's hard.
I think the business, the first thing that came to mind was contentment. Being happy with what you have, right? And I do think that probably is where my mind would go now. But from a technical standpoint of the business, I think the business working so well that it kind of evolves and makes decisions without everything having to filter through me, Brandon. That's what we are trying to evolve towards is a business that is so our values and our passion is so instilled from the top down and the bottom up that it just works without us having to remind. And new staff come in and they understand the same thing that everybody else does without me and Brandon having to teach it. So that's where we're trying to get now with the business. So
Awesome.
There's a lot of shoulders out there that need us. We're coming. We can help you.
And that's normally where we end it, but I have one question that I wanted to try and fit in, and I wanted to make sure we had time, specifically about your industry and multiple locations. How do you guys deal with, or how do you defend, there's an issue with PTs coming into a new area and an owner or key members being there for a short period of time, making it really great, and then they move on to the next area, and sometimes that location's not as good. And I'm not saying necessarily your location, but this is some feedback that I've heard about PTs in my time.
So the example would be me and Lee starting this. We move on, and then
Building like a good solid clientele, and then you leave that clientele. Like, how do they know that, or how do you guys deal with making sure that they get the same high level of care and that you're not just dropping them and moving on to the next shiny thing?
So yeah, we Tyler is the PT with the most experience. Well, Melissa is, but she's part-time. But Tyler, I spent 6 months with him. I was his clinical instructor, and when we get done, I would call him and talk about cases. I was the hour prior to coming over here. I'm giving them continuing education, and we're doing a lab, going over manual techniques. So it's a lot of investment in what they know, and they're designed to carry out, to get the vast majority of people well. Those that are struggling, they call us. So that's how you keep that level up. Like, they know that if a patient is not getting better and they're frustrated, the patient's frustrated, that prompts a phone call. And then I can come up and co-treat, which I will. I'll go into each clinic and I'll co-treat with that PT to get them unstuck. So there's my answer.
So I guess the right employees and the right training, and then staying involved and accessible if needed.
Correct.
we put a lot into the right employees. We put a lot into that, and there's some systems in place to make sure that the people that we are hiring are of the highest caliber and intrinsically motivated, intelligent, good customer experience. And Brandon and I are also both very aware. I feel like we don't have blind spots when it comes to the clinical side. We're aware of where our weaknesses are, and we go after those from the beginning. So when we hire somebody that might not have the experience in a certain area, we invest time in them to bring up their level. And so, yeah, it is the people first, and then spending time with them, and also being there for them and encouraging them to call. And so, yeah, that's stuff that we'll lose sleep over, is feeling like a PT is on an island in a clinic that is not capable.
Yeah.
Because we know we'll start to lose then if we have somebody that's not that good. And they really shouldn't be seeing this population, and we will start to lose people. So there's been an emphasis on that.
It's common in the industry.
Really.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you staying an extra minute. And that was an awesome way to end it. I appreciate y'all's time, and
Thanks, Randy.
I'd love to do it again down the road for sure. There's a lot more stuff I want to cover.
Sure.